Hi, welcome. This is Joy Koff with Miracles of Joy, and I am here to interview one of my dear friends, John Cappello. So you guys learn a little bit more about John. Welcome to Miracles of Joy webinars. And John is a psychic medium from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So welcome, John.
Thank you very much for the invitation to be a part of your webinar today.
So let me get started with how did you get started in being a psychic medium? How did you get started in the business?
Well, it's an interesting story. I never dreamed of being a medium. I have an MBA and a degree in economics, and passed away in 1992. He suddenly left me much about because I wasn't involved with it at the time, and because no one else was available, and employees would come up to me and say, "Hey, we think your dad is still here," because where he that he owned, and so I investigated, and I had psychics that to come over, and what they did was they felt like at the store, and they invited me to take some classes, and so I had an idea. So I did that, and I found out I had a ability to pick up information from beyond the physical, whether it be on our to do mediumship, just a variety of areas. So I was really shocked that I could do the things I was tested on. And I practiced for about 5 years professionally. But once I got started, I just pretty much have never looked back. I've done careers, but none of them have been as successful or as fulfilling me as this one. So I'm really pleased to be able to do this kind of work. And I got started, like I say, a long time ago in 1992, but I started professionally, and then I went full-time in 2009, and I've been full-time ever since.
So that's very interesting, and you've been doing this a long time. I do have another question. When you meet people in the world, like friends or meet people, how do you tell them what it is that you do for a living?
Pardon me, I didn't get that. How do I?
Like when you meet people,
living with.
Yeah, when you meet people out in the world, how do you explain what it is that you do for a living?
Oh, how do I explain what I do? Something choppy here. Well, there's a difference between I do both, and I read those energies differently. It's interesting because sometimes when I'm at an event, the predominance of the readings are psychic, and other times the predominance of mediumship. And the difference is that a psychic reads information around a person, about their job, their relationship, their career, their children. You might get information about if they've had car trouble recently. You may see a future around them. You oftentimes pick up events, which is always fascinating and gives you a lot of verification. Because you'll see an actual entity, or you'll see an object, or you'll see either a person or even an ET around people. So it's fascinating. When you do mediumship, the entity has characteristics. And its own personality, because a lot of times a certain saying that a person uses, and physical form. And so there's a difference there. Now, the is that we acknowledge a sixth sense or intuition. We certainly acknowledge the continuity of life, but people don't like you to say you practice it, or the general public will balk when they say you speak to spirits, or they immediately want to pull back and say, oh, well, what this person is kind of. But I never can say that I'm a psychic at a party, because I'm suddenly inundated with all who want a reading, or want me to prove it to them, or whatever, which I'll make an appointment. But we all have this gift of being able to beyond the physical. And I know I'm giving you a long answer here, and you can probably want to take from it if you run into some people that ask you about your own abilities, because we all have them to some degree. We all have, in some degree, mediumship, but most people don't like to talk about it. They don't want to run the risk of ridicule, or they don't want run the risk of even being psychic. Energy can be wrong, because it's all about energy. That's the predominant around a situation. But energy changes, and so as well. So I hope that answers your question about what do I say. Oftentimes, that's what I say. I tell people that we all have this gift, and are paying attention and recognizing the information that we're receiving.
So, John, what is your I'm not sure if you heard that. What is your motivation in this work?
Primarily help people. You can't do this kind of work and people. It's kind of a calling, a ministry in a sense associated with it, and validation about their own feelings, about their own life situation. Helping people is the primary motivation for doing this kind of work.
So how do you connect with spirit? Do you see them? Do you hear them? So I guess, I don't know if you heard that question, but I asked, how do you connect with spirit? How do you prepare before you begin a session?
How do I connect with spirit, and how do I prepare for a session?
A reading
or a reading. Many times the information comes on its own. Like, I'll know if someone is wanting to kill their father or mother, or even a child, or sometimes even an animal, and no information about their career. It's just a matter of paying attention to the energy and on the particular subject. So when I'm with a person, I usually can sense their energy field. And once I'm in their energy, a set of television sets that kind of pop on around me, I get several sensations. I'll feel their griefs, or I'll in some way start hearing things from guides or God. I'll hear information that comes to me, or there might be in some sort that comes. But many times, and maybe probably most of the time, visions. I'll get pictures that I have to try to interpret very. And so the longer that you do this kind of work, the more familiar the vast majority of things that happen in people's lives. So dating, and it's something that I think is healthy because it touches me and it makes me a broader minded or a person their perspective of life and the human condition. But as far as preparing for a session, I like to have as clear a mind as possible. If I'm going into a session, I like to spend maybe a few moments by myself and that the things that are going on in my world don't suddenly pop up because I want to be able to focus and be able to give all of my people that have come to me for reading. So taking time out and because if you're not balanced in the way that you do things, then it's harder to read people. And that's my opinion.
So how do you feel your readings are different than like what people see on TV, like John Edwards? Or are they different?
As everyone is different, and so the kind of the king of psychics in a way. I've never attended one of his, but he gives readings in more of a traditional way. Some of the schools teach. I don't. I give my readings the way that me, and both ways are valid. Certainly an expert and has a tremendous following. Level is out of the park, but he has his own cases and his own way of paying attention, which I'm sure if I ever spoke to him, notes. But for me, it's just a matter of being able to focus on the subject, on the client, and in this way, I can give every person in the room. I don't wait for spirit to come to me or to show up on people, and for me, they usually show up. But not always. Sometimes I'll miss someone. The client really wants to come in because someone else wanted to come in, precede the person who was requested to. Sometimes a spirit will bring in another. A father might bring in a mother, or a mother might bring in a child. A grandmother might bring in a child, or something. So it's very different. But as far as other psychics are concerned, I think you have to watch what their technique is or where their talents lie, because a lot of times the psychics say, "Oh, I had a man who was a carpenter, and he had an arm injury, and so they'll kind of hone on a particular area, and they'll keep make that more and more defined, closer to a person in the room. Whereas what I do is I just think who I want to speak to, and give them a reading. So it could be reading, or it could be a mediumship reading, or a little bit of both. Because a lot of times the spirits have opinions, and they like to comment on what's going on with something new in their life. So I hope that answers that question.
That does. I have another question. Like, is there something that a client should do to prepare before they have a reading with you? Should they What information should they gather before they sit down and have a reading?
The first thing a client needs to be is open-minded. I mean, if they come in and information that is given to them, then I'm not going to be. You'll have to understand that I give messages based on my perspective. You say tomato, and so you have to be a little bit, and that's where the wiggle room comes in. But if you come in for a reading, be focused on what you want to hear. A lot of times, if you have questions, you might have questions prior to your reading. I don't have to see the questions, but we have to have that energy room, and usually those questions are answered. If they're not, then they just ask those questions. But we just kind of let the spirit run the reading, and what I do is I communicate what is communicated to me, because I try not to have any of my own opinions or my own attitudes injected into the reading. This way I can to those that I may personally disagree with, but in my estimate, the energy that gives them the best answer is what comes from spirit. Right or wrong, it just means the information from spirit given to them is need to know and they need to hear. So if they prepare for time, they need to respect spirit. It's not just those that they may be wanting to speak to, because it is a moment to hear from someone who's on the other side, on the continuity of life.
So what kind of information can someone expect during one of your sessions? Like, can you give us some feedback, some examples of some information you brought through for other people?
That absolutely. A lot of times when is coming in from spirit, many times they let me know the relationship they had with, if they had a mother's role, a father's role, they show up on the left, men show up on the right, and then times they show up in front, as do animals. And now that's just for me. A kind of a hierarchy. There's a kind of our spirits have around a person. For instance, I'll see angels and guides. I'll see ancestors set back behind a person. So, and if there's someone that's not immediate around you, then information. That's when I'll get issues that are around you at the moment. The stress that's around you at the moment is what I will read. Now, as far as for instance, I will tell people, you're a nurse, or you're in the medical, you're a teacher, or you work at a bank, or you're a manager. There's energy that I'll see around them, or I'll see them working around others. And so those are the types of information that I get. Specifically because not everybody's a nurse, not everyone is a teacher, and to be I have no way of knowing that is good about that the information is correct. Now, when a spirit comes in, not only do they show their relationship in some way or form, many times the last moments of their life, they will talk about the people that were around them, or that they knew. They will talk about certain incidents that would be uh, validating to that relationship that they have. For instance, if the father had a truck or interested in the truck, or if he worked with wood, or if he did a specific thing, if he liked to go fishing or hunting or things of that nature. If he was extremely tall or something like that, are unique to that particular person, usually come out. And mothers will do. Of course, a lot of times grandmothers will show themselves in the kitchen, making pies or cooking, something like that. Or you'll see a grandmother showing me, or china, or a dining room table, those sorts of things. But it's like I say, the last part of their life, they'll show whether or not they had cancer or heart disease, had if they fell. Many times a suicide will come in overdose, or they shot themselves. It's an experience, and it's something that can be life-changing for people. It's hard to say exactly what will come in, but
I do have one question. I'm sure that it probably brings people plenty of peace knowing that, especially if it's a suicide, where they may have had a child or a loved one that has taken their life. I'm sure it gives them peace to know that. I'm sure they have some spiritual beliefs around that, and that must bring some sort of peace knowing that their loved one is okay.
to know that someone has crossed over and successfully made that transition. To be careful though, because suicides, they're not in a place I would call hell, or they're not in misery on the other side. The problems they had in life, they take with them, and if they are in life, then they're going to be a little upset and depressed and spirit. A little bit longer to overcome issues when you're in spirit, but it means that it is a little more difficult. Sometimes suicides are harder. It is an unnatural occurrence. It depends on the situation. I think everyone is the same, but generally a suicide that they're going to be accepted by the client, and that they're going to be forgiven, and because they need that from us. People in spirit need us just as we need them, and we need love and our validation, and we need to make sure that they know it, and that we miss them, and that we love them, and we want them to be in our lives. But there usually is a little hesitation from them to kind of come back into our lives, because they often see how much they've hurt us, and we are hurt. We didn't want them to leave. We want them to be here, and so I want to be careful what I say, because I'm certainly not trying to hurt anyone's feelings. But a lot of times people who come to me feel guilty because they wanted to do more for that person that may have committed suicide, and it's what's and you can't blame yourself for someone who chose to follow a different. That was their path, and you have your path, and so it's always a difficult situation.
I do have one question. I want to talk a little bit about what are some of the workshops that you offer? I know that you do a gallery, so tell us a little bit about the gallery type settings, but also talk about the other workshops that you offer as well.
Okay, a gallery I do public demonstrations, and I usually ping pong the audience so that family members get a unique reading instead of person to the next or around a room. I feel like it's more interesting for there to have you go ping pong through the audience, just doing everyone in a row. And of course, I can't guarantee I can get focus, and I do the best I can. But if someone says no, I have to accept the fact that what they're saying. Do I see the energy around them? Yes, and so that's why I say I can give everyone as long as I can sense the energy. But whether or not the person takes it is certainly. But in a gallery, it's usually in the light. I usually used to do my psychic work in the dark. I did my first 11 years as the events in the dark because I didn't want there to be any kind of idea that it wasn't authentic, because it had. And the reason why I went to doing the work in the light or in a lit room is because of John Edward, because of other people, the effort to make this type of work more. And so I felt like it was important that people be able to see my face and see me working, bringing people in, as opposed to being in the dark and keeping myself a mystery from them. And a lot of people being in the dark anyway. So that's why I decided to move my gallery. Now, as far as a private reading is concerned, I in an office office space that I rent, and I often do psychometry, and so if you come for a private reading, if you from a deceased loved one, you can hand me that object. Many times I pick up the tragedy that happened, a motorcycle accident or something of that nature. Those that are difficult to discern at first, because it's hot, but it has a negative electric. That's the way I can describe it. The imp is not something that I initially like to experience, dissipate that energy and start to see what that energy is, or then it becomes clearer and I can deal with it a little bit better. I generally like metal objects. You go to different objects, but things like wood might have the imprint on them as much, but I can read it. Pictures are good, but it's metal or even that have been held quite a long time. I have a better imprint, having letters that I didn't read very well because it was not held very long. And so if there's not enough of an imprint on it, and oftentimes, I don't really need anything to hold, but it's read something that has a strong imprint on it. I usually do pretty good with that. So.
And so tell us about some of the other workshops that you offer, John. I know you have a series of workshops that you offer as well.
Series of workshops. I have a psychic development workshop. I have a mediumship workshop called Sitting with. I have my psychic workshop is Psychic Journeys, and then I have for life includes other interests of mine, which would be astrology, like horse. I'll do palmistry. I'll do skulls or crystals. Action. I do palmistry. Just a little bit of everything, because what I try to do is I try to bring the hocus pocus out of it, and make it fun and make it interesting. I have auras. Where I have an aura camera, and I will take pictures of people with chakras, and it's all very fascinating things, and to be able to your own life are fascinating, and it's enjoyable. I think so, but it also gives me an opportunity not to just the just working with on the physical. Gives me another avenue to show a skill set about which is teaching. So I like to teach.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, John. That's about all the time that we have left. So what I'm going to do is I know that we have some events that are coming up, and I want to thank you again for telling us a little bit about what it is that you do and how you do it.